introduce ourselves to you, those who are here. And
That's April.
April is in the bottom left.
Hi there.
We're going to make you the full screen in just a minute, but
Sure.
Her name is April?
her name is April. Yes, that's
Oh.
right. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, I have my great granddaughter. Really? And there was April Shiro, and then-
I have to accept the being streamed here.
So is she named for somebody else in the family named April?
I have a great granddaughter named April.
Uh-huh.
No, but she said,
But so did,
where she
so did,
named
so
after
did
So
they,
that one,
did her parents name her? or-
no, I think they just like the name.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Good morning.
All right, well, let's get started. So we are, and April, you'll have to help me with your last name's pronunciation again.
Oh, sure. It's Redzik.
Rezik.
Uh-huh.
The
R-E-D like the color, Z-I-C, zebra, ice, cat. My husband is actually a refugee from Bosnia. And if you do that pronunciation, it's Redic, but we usually go with Redzik because it's just easier for people from the Midwest.
Oh, okay, yeah. And well, some of us are from the Midwest, so anyway.
There you go.
So let's, we're just gonna introduce ourselves here quickly. So April, I'm George Smith and I serve as the rector of St. Mark's and been around since 2006 and have been involved with DuPage Pads ever since I got here. It was one of the first things
Thank
I
you.
found out about that St. Mark's is committed to. So I'm just gonna call on people as we go around. So we've got Judy, do you want to say hello?
Hello, I'm Judy Johnson, and I've been here since the middle of the last century, but I've only been here in Glen Ellen since August.
I'm Sue Mylander, and I've been here for a long time.
Hi, I'm Nick Brandon.
Ashley Richardson.
Hi there.
I'm Kevin Sheldon.
Edna Hetherington.
Diane Dins.
Lois Sheridan.
And then on the Zoom, we've got as our host there.
I'm Laura, we've met.
They've been chatting.
And we may have a few more people join us on Zoom, but what I'm going to do is change what we can see here so that it's April. Right now I've got the gallery, so oh, you did it for us, Laura. Thanks.
Thanks.
That's great. So April, we're so glad that you're here. And the way we've had this, what our conversations have been, give you a chance to introduce yourself, give us some background, and then maybe you could, tell us a little bit about what you see are the key things happening at DuPage Pads, and then we'd love to ask you some questions.
Sure.
That sounds like a good plan. Let's do it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is April Redzik. I'm president and CEO of DuPage Pads. Some of you may have not gotten to meet me yet in person because I was a pandemic hire. I joined Pads in the summer of 2020. They interviewed me in a parking structure because that was what was safe and available back then. And I began during the pandemic. It was an interesting process joining at that time. A lot of people have asked me, what made you decide it would be a great idea to start running an organization and take on this opportunity in the middle of a pandemic? And the answer is that I believe it was the right thing to do. And I'm a very strong believer in divine providence, and we are given opportunities to serve and to make change in times when a higher power has decided that is what is right, not necessarily what we have decided is easy. And I'm so glad that I did. It has been just a really tremendous thing, getting to be a part of what has been oftentimes the life-saving change in people's life when they need it most and they need hope the most. I feel like coming out of winter and this afternoon becoming one of our first warm days, hope is one of my favorite themes right now. And as I heard you talking about when we started this, I am named after springtime because when I was born, my mom thought that my hair looked like daffodils. And so spring and the hope that comes around spring is something that is very near and dear to my heart. I became involved in the nonprofit sector a little bit by accident. I had a degree in English and anthropology and had a background in journalism and thought that it would be a great idea to get a job out of school and then go back and get my PhD. So I got a job in 2001 with Catholic Charities and was editing their donor magazine and thought that I would give back my time by volunteering at a homeless shelter. So there was a family shelter called St. Sylvester in the west side of the city, and I started spending my Thursday evenings there. We had a literacy program for the parents to get a break and for children to learn a love of reading and learning. And you'd come every week with a book and a project, and we talked to the kids about their lives a little bit and why books are an amazing thing. I remember my first book that I read to them was the story of Ferdinand. If you are familiar with that, he is a pacifist bull. And we talked about what he was capable of and what he believed in and acceptance. And it was very cool watching the kids absorb that message and find joy in reading. And then the holidays came around and we did a holiday giving program. Everybody got a Christmas gift and we brought them in and let the kids unwrap some of them together. And there were two boys, their names were Michael and Isaiah. They got scooters. It was not a great day in winter. There was ice on the sidewalk. They took their scooters and they went outside. And I said to the manager at the shelter, what is going on? Why are you letting these kids go out in scooters in the winter? I don't understand. And she said, April, these kids have never gotten new Christmas gifts before. This is a big day for them. And I was hooked and wanted to be in service where kids and families and people who are very vulnerable could have a better life. And it is now, 20 some years later. And I'm really proud to still be making sure that kids have an opportunity to have a safe place to sleep and a support system. And I like to remind people, when I say kids and I say children, I do talk about, and I do think it's important that we make sure no child sleeps in a car. And that's something that we decided very wholeheartedly as a board that we would make happen during COVID. But it is also very important for me to remind people that all of those coming into us are someone's child and children of God. And so we work to help all of them. And we do make sure no child sleeps in a car. And we do make sure that we are providing a loving, caring, and safe environment for people of all ages to come in. So that's sort of a little bit of my background. Coming into DuPage Pads, you may know that we had some big changes right before I started when for so many years, and because of wonderful people like all of you in our faith community for 36 years, we had been hosted in spaces from our faith partners, and we were born out of the faith community. And during the pandemic, we learned from the health department that it might not be safe to provide shelter in the same way that we had been. So we changed our model to one that we'd been using for medical respite for years. In medical respite, what would happen is people would come out of a hospital system or a doctor, or if they'd had a fall in between going from one shelter to another, we'd put them in a hotel room for a while. And we knew this was a great way for people to heal. So we proposed that as a model and started it up with just 68 rooms in March, a week from now. It was March 20th of 2020. And that worked well for a while, but there was more need. And so we had 68 rooms when I started, and we did have a waiting list, and they'd kind of been holding on until they had new leadership and we could get going on it. And so we revisited it, went up to 115 rooms in that fall. And that was the fall of 2020, became a very interesting time. When I started, we had maybe 5 kids in shelter. And during the fall of 2020, what wound up happening is I would go into our office at 601 West Liberty, and moms with strollers and car seats were starting to come in to our intake site. And some came with car seats and that they would take the baby out of in the back of their car. And some would take the bus and arrive in a stroller, or someone would drop them off. And they had no place to stay. And we were at capacity. So I prayed on it and I called our board chair. And we decided on my drive home that we would propose to our executive committee that no child would sleep in a car in DuPage County. And I got a call back shortly after, and the board approved that plan. And so we went knowing that we were going to go over budget, but that we were going to make sure that we did not have children with no place to go. And again, I am a big believer in divine providence. The next day we got a check from a major donor to cover the cost of hotel rooms. And I feel like that has kind of been how things have happened since we have committed to doing the best that we can in this environment to help people. And during this process, we've not only changed the number of rooms, the number of people we're serving, we are now, oh my gosh, I want to say a week and a half ago, we were at 303 people in shelter. To give you perspective, in the depths of winter, pre-COVID, we had 150 pads available for people to sleep. So we've essentially doubled how many people we are serving. Some of this has to do with, we're helping the families from Woodridge through, the county is using us as a resource to make sure those Woodridge families who were hit by the tornado have a place to stay until their places are taken care of. So that's maybe 40-ish people in our population, but we do have about 107 children were staying with us 2 weeks ago. I'm happy to tell you that number's down because we have some families who've been housed. Hooray for that. But really just capacity and our desire to serve has been echoed by people of faith who believe in what we're doing. Folks like you, if your years of pumpkin patch support and other support to us have really made that possible. If you don't mind, I would love to introduce you to a couple of the people you've helped. I'm going to do a screen share real fast because I feel like you're here because of them. And so I would like to introduce you to some of them. This is Siobhan. These are her babies. They came into us during COVID. So Siobhan is not only caregiver for Malia and Layla, who you see here, but also she is the legal guardian of her little sister, who is Siobhan's in her 20s. She's got great skin, so I know she looks really young. She's actually in her 20s, and she has a sister who's like 18-ish. They came in during COVID. It was financial reasons, and because she had an additional person she was taking care of. Her sister is attending college now. Siobhan was housed through rapid rehousing, which is kind of special dollars for people who are going to be able to make a faster recovery from homelessness. In a new environment and a stable environment with a little bit of a leg up, Siobhan was able to figure out a plan for her next life step, which is she's been accepted into a CNA program. She's nursing and she's working to get a higher degree in that arena. Her sister's attending college. Her oldest, Miss Malia here, is attending preschool and is having a great time and very successful there. And her little sister is now a walking toddler, and thank goodness that they have an apartment. So they have, she has some room to move around in. One thing that we found a lot during the hotel stays is, number one, families are way more comfortable coming in a hotel environment. I love to go out and visit people who are staying with us in what is going to be our interim housing center. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But when I go to visit them, one of the things I hear is a lot of moms tell me that they had been couch surfing or staying in a car because they were worried about going into congregate shelter. They can't sleep. When you're a mom, it's hard to sleep without walls around your children. So the wall means rest and a space for you to stay. Also, it's very hard to change a diaper in congregate shelter, because if your baby wakes up in the middle of the night, you have to worry about, waking other people up, depending on the space. Even if you have kind of a separate room or a separate area, it's still really challenging and can be scary. So they've been willing to come into us with this model, and then we can do things like help them get rapidly rehoused, help people like Siobhan take that next step toward their career so that they can have their own place. Another person I'd love to introduce you to. This is Kenny. Kenny's story is very different. In 2016, Kenny was working at a manufacturing facility in the south suburbs, and he had a heart condition and it became worse. He wound up hospitalized, and he lost his house. He lost his wonderful SUV that he likes to tell me about when I visit him. He fell into very hard financial times because he could not continue working. Eventually his disability ran out and he had oodles of hospital expenses. So he moved to DuPage County to live with his son in his son's apartment. And he started to see, what he told me was he started to see that living with his son and staying with his son was starting to harm their relationship. So he would go from sleeping on his son's couch to, because his son did not have a lot of resources either. He'd go on the train, public transportation, and he'd just sleep on there during the night, because at least it was a sheltered location. And this continued for years. He'd go from couch to train, and we got on his radar. Chris, who was our street outreach worker for years, would just check on him and ask him how he was doing. And Kenny said he was not comfortable coming in and asking for help for quite a while. And eventually, his health started getting worse. Again, he has very bad COPD, and we got him to come into shelter, and he had a roommate who also had a heart condition. And so they did really well having peer support. He got into the doctor, and because he's in pretty bad health condition, he qualified for permanent supportive housing. So he moved in about 2 weeks ago to his apartment. This is his own couch in his own apartment. We're working to make sure he can get to the heart doctor from this location and just really take care of his health, because in his circumstances, that's what is going to be the best life situation for him. He told me a couple things. One is that we should change our name to Beacon of Light, because we were a light in the darkness for him during his darkest hour. And he also said that his faith helped him get through it, and he revisits it pretty regularly. When he prays in thanks, and he cannot always find reason for how he wound up with his health condition, but he believes that God challenges us so we can see ourselves in new ways and find new strength in ourselves. He's just a really kind and sweet person who believes that, his faith got him through a tough time. So this is Kenny. Kenny is another example of why I believe the type of interim housing hotel-based situation that we're looking to put together is great for clients, because Kenny's heart condition was not doing well without a place to stay and stay stable and get into the doctor. A third family that I would like to introduce you to here, this is Janisha. Janisha is about to get into an apartment of her own. So Siobhan and Kenny have both graduated out of interim housing. Janisha is still in it for a little while. Janisha's story for coming in has to do with violence. She was not safe in her home. And so she picked up 2 infants and a toddler and left fast. We have helped her to get as comfortable as she can right now in a hotel room. For these young folks, the challenging part was figuring out how to set up a bed so it's safe for everybody, how she would still get sleep. She is one of the moms who told me, April, I could not have gotten a congregate shelter. All my babies wake up. I don't sleep a lot as is because of this. I don't want to do this to everyone else. And so for her to be able to have a door of her own, for her to be able to give the babies baths is a really big deal. We help her try and figure out daycare and a job. She did just another issue for Janisha is she had a car, but it was not working. And so she didn't have reliable transportation. So steps for her were make sure that we get her car fixed. So we helped her with that, help her on the job end. So we helped her with job searches, and then how do you have a job and be a single mother now with 3 infants? Finding reliable daycare was going to be another really big part for her situation. So she now, she got a job. She's arranging daycare like this week, and she's looking at apartments. So I'm happy to tell you that she's on her way toward her next exciting steps in life. And again, these are just some of the people that you have helped to change their lives through your support. So those are my fun people that I enjoy sharing with you. A little bit about what we're doing next. So when I was brought in to lead this organization, it was really important that we look at ways that we could do what is best for our clients and safest for our clients right now. I'm happy to tell you that we, with the type of hotel-based shelter we've been providing, we are going on 2 years of provision of services, and we have had 0 outbreaks. So when we have individual cases of COVID, and we have had them, number one, and I would tell anyone this, we have followed whatever the health department tells us. And I feel like that has been a great learning lesson for me. So if the health department says, April, this is what you need to do, that is what I do. And that's come to masking, that's come with, for us, helping people get vaccinated. It has also been what to do if you could have a case of COVID. And so Karen Ayala is my superhero of the past 2 years. And what we do if someone does show symptoms of anything is we make sure they're in their own space. They stay in their own space. We get them tested there. So they're not, again, a lot of the people we're serving don't have a car. So putting them in an Uber or a taxi or something to try and go and get them tested means another person could be exposed. So we just keep them where they are. We get them tested there, and then we check in with the health department to make sure that if they were to have any more strong symptoms, they would be cared for. So we did have somebody get hospitalized, but we connected her and she came back out and was okay. And we've had no outbreaks. It's only people stay in their room when they've had something. And I'm really proud to tell you that by following the advice of people in the medical profession, we have been in really, really good shape in terms of keeping people safe. We've also seen in 2 years some really tremendous outcomes. So 80%, we've had an 80% reduction in mental health instances. A lot of people who come into shelter have been harmed in some way, either emotionally, physically, or both. When they have been homeless, or that was a reason they have become homeless. When they have a little space to find peace and healing, they are much less likely to have mental health issues. So that's been reduced by 80%. We've had a 75% decrease in physical health issues, instances of bronchitis, people who've slipped and fallen because they were moving through parking lots or on public transportation in the winter. We used to have a lot of broken bone sort of situations in January and February, and that is practically non-existent now. When people have bronchitis or the flu, they have a bed to stay in during the day rather than being out in the elements. And so we've seen them heal and get better much faster and not need a more extreme amount of medical care. So that's reduced by 75%. We've also, if someone is sick, if you have a cold or you have the flu, if you're literally right next to another person, they're probably going to wind up with something. Having them in their own space has really created a lot of good health outcomes. We've also seen a 500% increase in case management utilization, which is social work speak for getting whatever help you need to get you to that next step. So when we have people who can stay in the same space and their case manager is present, they can go to that person and say, I'm looking to get a job, and we go to them to connect on that. They can attend job trainings. We were actually able to do a job fair with Home Goods and a couple other places this past fall. So we've seen that they've been able to come in and get services at a lot higher rate. For people like Kenny, who have health conditions, we can also connect them to whatever healthcare they need and make sure that they can apply. Again, Kenny and his roommate are never going to be able to have the type of job situation I do because they literally can't breathe and they have to have really regular heart assistance. But we can get them medical help and we can find them supportive housing so that they can have a place of their own and move on to end their homelessness. So we've learned all these good things. Our mantra since day one of COVID has been to not stand idly by. You all have helped make that possible. And so as we have learned these things and we've looked at what to do next, our board voted last November to move forward on acquiring a property. And we found a 130 room hotel that we are acquiring, I believe on March 29th. We're waiting on our closing date. This is going to be a space where people can come and stay and check in. We'll still be doing intakes in Wheaton, same as before. But we will be allowing people to have a safe place to stay until we can assist them toward whatever their next steps are toward ending their homelessness. I'm really excited about this. I told you about 3 of them. We have, 300 people with circumstances where they really need our help. And we were able to get a good number of vouchers to help people move on. And so I'm in the next couple of weeks, what we're going to start seeing, especially with our large families, we have one family of 8, they're going to start moving into apartments of their own because we were able to have them in one place. We were able to help them on this journey. I'm so excited about what this means for the people in our care. The hotel we are purchasing is in Downers Grove. They have been very welcoming. The police department, the emergency medical services, the library system, the health system have all been really tremendous in welcoming us and helping us to help make this possible. I firmly believe it is the best thing for those in our care. And we will be inviting people like you to be a part of what we are doing. I'm excited to tell you. In the spring, we'll be having opportunities where congregations can come be site support in the same way that we've been so lucky to have the hospitality and welcoming from all of you for so many years. I can't wait to welcome you into our new space. And we are hoping that kind people like you will not only support the project, but also come out and volunteer or drop off a meal. There's going to be a lot of laundry to do. So that's another big thing. We're going to be inviting faith groups to come in is maybe you'll come in and do laundry, bring some coffee or bring a dinner. Eventually we're hoping that people can come in and cook a dinner where we are. Stay tuned for some more in the kitchen and soon. But the goal is just to really allow people to continue the tradition of hospitality and welcome that has changed so many lives at our location. We're hoping you'll come to us rather than us coming to you. So that's my update on what's going on. This is for all of you. We couldn't do it with, I will tell you, there've been so many times when we hit a dead end and needed to figure out what to do next. I prayed and a faith group helped us get through it. So thank you for your prayers. I've been told by multiple places, including United Way, that what we have in DuPage County is a unicorn because so many pieces came together at the speed that it did. We went from a strategic plan to reality in 15 months.
Yeah.
That is unprecedented. I will also tell you, you will hear more about us first. We are not the last place in Illinois to be utilizing this model. United Way of Lake County is United Way. PADS of Lake County is looking at this. South Suburban PADS is looking at this. Oak Park is doing a less large version of this, and some places downstate are exploring it as well. So we're going to see, I think, more of this model of help. Also from just a financial standpoint, if we were to lease a hotel, it's $1.8 million a year. We're purchasing the property and doing our renovation and acquisition expenses for a little under $7.5 million. So in a couple of years, this will pay off. And because we were able to utilize a unprecedented federal funding opportunity rather than use it, we worked with the county board about this. Your county board representatives have been just the most tremendous of people. And as we looked at what would make the most financial sense, a lot of places are going to be using CDBG CV CARES Act money through the fall to pay for hotel rooms. So that's money that kind of goes away. We used that chunk of money for a purchase. $5 million of our total costs came from those funds. Instead of them going toward a Band-Aid and then us going back, we just used it for a solution. So I'm also really excited about the fiscal smarts that I believe is coming out of this sort of circumstance. Having $5 million to give us a leg up to make this purchase is pretty once in a lifetime. So can't wait to tell you more about it as we move along with the purchase.
So, April, this is amazing. Just information and your leadership is clearly linchpin in this. One of the questions people have is there going to be a need to go back to shelters that rotate, the First Congregational Church in Glen Ellen, for example, or St. Barnabas? Is that on the radar, or is that not on the radar?
So we've talked to most of these churches, and what we're telling them, and what I will tell you, at least for the now, is we're going to be inviting them to host where we are rather than asking them for the space. A lot of the churches we're talking to have been repurposing the space that we'd had for other reasons anyway. So their availability has not been what it was. FCC Glen Ellen has a different use. They're planning actually for a lot of their property. And I don't want to, I'll leave Seth to give you kind of the detail on that if you haven't heard already, but they have another use they're going to have. A lot of these are going to be places where they're looking at preparing a meal as a group on their site and then having volunteers that bring it over. Or as we're doing laundry and things like that, we're exploring with them whether they want to pick it up and do it from their location or they'd rather bring people over to us. But I think what you're going to see is a lot more of people coming to the Downers Grove location rather than us being in their space. If anyone is interested in like a warming center at some point in the future, that might be something we explore in terms of utilizing our faith partner space. But I think for the most part, we're going to be where we are. We got this property of this size because we thought the capacity would be good. With that said, I've already warned our board, if next winter we are completely full and I have another mom come with babies and car seats, I'm going to ask them for, approval for us to make sure that they have a place to stay. And that might be renting a few hotel rooms through the winter to get us where we need to be. But we really think with 130 rooms, especially because if you're right now, if you're a single, you have a roommate, we're going to work once we acquire the property, and I'm not allowed to take any bids on this until after we close because it's federal funds. But so say we close on March 29th, on the 30th, we're going to be looking at we have a pro bono architecture firm. They do architecture and interior design. It's called Designs for Dignity. They're going to help us figure out how we can turn the rooms into the appropriate amount of space for families, for roommates, so that we will have that capacity.
Yeah. I've got other questions, but I'd like to see what questions are here in this group.
I have a question.
This is Lois.
Hey, Lois, you're a legend.
Pardon me?
You're a legend.
Your name has come up many a time. You are a legend in the PADS community. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Well, we've been coming since 2006 to the Liberty
Amazing.
Center. And my question is, we've got this little group of people that work there. And we wondered if we're ever going to do it in that capacity, or would we be coming to the Downers Grove site or what? Because we all enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm so glad.
And we really miss it. And, we just wondered what's in the future.
Our hope is that you'll come to the Downers Grove site. And we're working right now on figuring out what hosting would look like. So say you sign up for a host night the same way you had been in a, we have our support coordinators. The hope would be that you coordinate support, but at the hotel. So when you come in, it might be, we need to figure out what people are comfortable with and what numbers. Another thing that we're looking at having in the space is, so now a third of the people staying with us are children. And they're attending school. And so we've been working with the school district on, how are our kids doing and what do they need to flourish. And one of the things is they may need tutoring and some help. So we're going to have an education room. And if you sign up to be doing support, it might be food and laundry or hospitality. And we're looking for someone to help person the front desk. But it might also be if you have a former educator who'd be willing to staff the tutoring room for a couple hours in case we have somebody come in who needs help with math or needs help with reading, or maybe you have somebody who might be willing to come in and just read a book. And so we'd have story hour as a part of your host night, and the kids can come and, hear a story and enjoy a little time. And honestly, our other hope with that is some of our single moms might be able to just take a shower during that time without worrying about what is going on in the room. I know that sounds like such a small thing, but that is actually something we've been working on. Because all the local domestic violence shelters are full, we are getting a lot more single moms coming with needs than we'd ever seen before. We do think when family shelter is able to have a little more capacity, that might help. A lot of group shelter locations, just because of COVID, they're down to 50%. Or because of staffing, they're down to less. So we're getting a lot of overflow, and I think that's contributing to the number of children. But I also think a lot of the families that are coming into us had been what we're terming the invisible homeless. If you've been couch surfing or in a car, you might not have been counted in shelter numbers because you weren't going to the shelter. And so we do think we're going to have a lot more families. And so that'll affect hosting a little bit, just if you're able, because we would love to have a little bit more available for children. And DuPage Children's Museum is helping consult on one end for kids activities. And on the other side, we're working with the school district on that. So if you're willing, we'd love to have you come back. I think in April, we're gonna be able to share more of that and invite people in. So if you could tell your group, please hang tight just for another month or so. We'll have good information where we'd love to invite you to come in and help out. And we so appreciate all your support for so many years. I would not be able to do what I am doing right now without the years and years of support of people like you, that you're why we're all here.
Well, it's really exciting to see all that you're doing. It's such a major change. I was wondering, from the state of Utah years ago and other programs around the country, they've accepted the model that is cheaper to put people in apartments and permanent housing than to provide all the services. The county gave you $5 million, was it?
Yes.
Is that in recognition of the fact that putting people into housing actually saves the county money? Is that why they did it, or was it to help with the purchase of the hotel?
That's an interesting question. So I do believe more resources to get people housed into apartments or homes of their own is always a wonderful investment. Most of the people who are coming into us, honestly, I don't think they're ready to do it immediately. We want to get them in, but oftentimes staying with us at least for a little bit lets us know their wellness status and what else they need. So if they went directly, like Kenny, I don't think he'd be alive if he went directly into an apartment. Kenny had a heart attack while he was at our interim housing center, and we were able to get him to Good Sam immediately because he was with us. And the degree to which he had health issues, if he had just been, sleeping on the train, applied for a housing voucher and went straight in, for him, I don't think he'd be with us. And I don't know if somebody like Janisha, who also needs domestic violence and job help, they don't have to be with us for a long time, but I do think coming in oftentimes allows us to diagnose if there's other things going on that they need assistance for before they go in. So I think housing over more supportive housing and just more housing vouchers is great and you're right, it does save money on the ones for the long term. And we definitely need that also simply for capacity. Interim housing center is not meant to be single room occupancy apartments. It's meant to be a place where people can check in for a few days or as long as they need until we can get them stable into whatever the next step is. For the county board, they had money that they could only spend on coronavirus relief protections. And so there are only a few things that qualify for it. One of them was hotel stays, but it could also be to make a purchase to prevent coronavirus. And what we made a case for, there's two different funding pools, and I apologize if this is too much data, but $3 million of the funds we received were specifically for coronavirus prevention. And so because people have their own shower in their own room, it allows us to prevent coronavirus and also any future, say Corona comes back in a year or two or another pandemic, we're already equipped for whatever comes next. And so we worked with the county to make a case not only on the humanitarian effects of having this sort of interim housing center, but also the preventative effects. So that's the 3 million had to only be spent for certain things. I'd argue we're spending it smarter than people that are just buying hotel rooms forever, because that's what you can do with the funding pool. And then the additional 2 million was because the property and its location and the cost wound up being as high as it is. And they had ARPA funds that they wanted to spend to help the community. And they felt like this was a good investment of their funds.
Hmm.
So kind of a little bit of both.
Yeah, exactly. I do think that because there are some other funds, and you're in Glen Ellen, so you might be hearing more about this also with the property on Roosevelt. There are other funds that are coming up that are for housing people that are specifically for that I think you'll see some more work in. From a federal voting standpoint, I think Congress moved faster on the coronavirus relief stuff because that was the immediate emergency. And then they started seeing, numbers of like homelessness counts and things like that and where they were at. And so they wanted to do more in the housing arena as well.
Mhm. Hmm.
So when the Downers Grove property, when will that actually be ready to have people use it?
So the interesting thing is that people are already using it. So we've actually been in that property since March 20th of 2020, but we were a renter. And so what's happening actually Thursday and Friday of this past week, as we started moving people who had been, because we've been in 3 different hotels, we started moving them all into this one property at the Red Roof Inn this past week. So we're kind of up and moving, and we already have a system going by the time we take ownership of the property, which will be March 29th. The owner has been really great to work with. He's been donating back part of what we give. The part of what we're spending out to lease, he's a donor of ours as well, and became because of this, and just feels really strongly about our work. And so when we own, the only really big difference is our capacity will go up, because right now we have 115 rooms and we'll have 130 once we're in the space. So we're just kind of sliding in from leasing to ownership. But when we own, that means we can do a little more with the property, and we're excited about that part because we want to equip it. Again, we need a room for it when we have teenagers, because we have some families with really big age differences. There's like an infant in the house and a 9-year-old and a 14 or 16-year-old. And in circumstances like that, bedtimes are way different. And so what they have to decide between is, do they go to bed when the teenager's done with their homework? Do they go to bed when the baby needs to sleep? Is it all of the above? And so having that additional space where if we have a high school student and they have a paper due, they can go into a different room and then come back. It's going to really be helpful for everyone's sleep patterns, and to make sure. Well, one thing we heard as we started talking to people who are young adults and came out of the shelter system is it was really hard for them to be successful in school. And so that was one thing we really wanted to make sure we tackled, was having those sort of rooms available. So that will be great. We're also really excited, honestly, because we've been dying to invite our support congregations back and our site congregations back. And this is going to allow us to be able to do it because we have a space to invite them into. Whereas when it was a hotel, there's things we can and can't do. And one of those is, have a bunch of people into the space because we didn't own it. So 29th is the official day, unless we have a pro bono lawyer who's handling the process and a pro bono title company. And so if they tell me it's the 30th, it'll be the 30th, but I think it'll be the 29th. I'm also happy to tell you part of the reason so our campaign was $7.5 million. 5 came from the county. We closed out the rest of our acquisition expenses last Thursday at our Taste of Hope event. People have been incredible, just incredible. But the other reason we were able to close it is because we had a pro bono architect. We had a pro bono attorney. All of the funds that we raised went toward literally buying the property because so many people donated their services for other parts. And I'm not talking about, an attorney that has never done this before. The person whose expertise is in this, I called him to ask him how the process works and to ask his advice. And he said, hey, I'll just do it, April. He's a member of another one of our faith groups. And he really felt like this was going to be something that was meaningful for him to do. I've been telling our building task force and our board, this is our Opus project. This is a legacy. We're changing not only our community, but as other counties see this, they're going to want to do the same. And that is really exciting to me as well.
So April, it's really, it's one of these things that the pandemic swept through and gave us this opportunity. If there hadn't been the pandemic, we'd still be going, from congregation, parents, these site hosts, and we're doing that for how many years? And, really kind of stuck in that model that, it wasn't, there were a lot of problems with it, right? And you've been able to leapfrog into a whole better, for all of those reasons. Like the decline in physical issues, mental health issues, all the things you're talking about are like, oh, this is, it's just such a home run.
Yes, we are a pandemic blessing. And also just from my role, it's been so incredible to see people of faith who were given a talent, use that talent toward making sure so many people could have a safe place to stay. And we watched that time and again from just individual volunteers from our faith communities who just, they wanted to do something to help, and they used what God gave them to the best way possible. And that's what we're seeing roll out in action right now.
One of the amazing things to me is that Downers Grove is what has been able to agree to this, or do you have anything comment about that? Because, in Glen Ellen, where, there's this property on Roosevelt Road, and there's a lot of community conversation about it. And it, Glen Ellen is different from Downers Grove, and there are different issues and different site issues, but any comment on that process?
They've been amazing. I'll tell you, that's another thing. We were nervous about how, when this came up, we knew there was a property available, and we'd investigated it internally. We had an architect go out and look, but before we took any action, I called the village manager and I called the mayor, and the mayor was actually traveling. And I called and asked his blessing on the project, and he said, absolutely, this is something that we know is really important. And they've just been really wonderful to work with. We are zoned under lodging, which means there's things we can and can't do to comply with the law there. So we're going to have to make sure we're really careful in what doing intake there would not be allowed, but we have intake at Wheaton. We're checking people in and running it like a free hotel. And that allows us to keep our zoning. So rather than other projects where they're going through a 1 or 2 year zoning process, we have zoning going in as long as we align with what would be considered hospitality. The police department recognizes that by providing this service, it is It is making sure that people are in the best place for them and the safest place for them. As some of you may know, there have been issues with people staying in a parking structure in Downers Grove. We've been trying to get them out of the parking structure and into a better place to stay. Because a parking structure does not allow for you to have bathroom facilities. It is not warm. There are no walls to keep you safe. And from like just a general sanitation standpoint, you could wind up with cholera. It's not a good situation to not have modern facilities to live in. And so we've been working along with the police department and the village to get people to a better space. And so I think they've had a very firsthand look at what the people we're serving are going through and what a difference it can make to get someone into shelter. And sometimes we do street outreach with them and they don't come into our care for a place to sleep. We had somebody who was staying in the parking structure and he was not going to qualify to come into our services because of his background. If you are not a safe person to be placed in a room next to families and children, we have to find a different solution for your homelessness. And so for him, what it was is helping connect him with his brother. His brother owns land in North Carolina. He has a little house now on his brother's land. He sent us a picture of his little house and he goes fishing every day. He's living a very happy existence that is his best life under his circumstances. And so I think Downers Grove had a firsthand look at that. For the Glen Ellen project, one thing I will tell you is I think that it's going to be really important, and I've told this to DuPage United, I think it's going to be really important for them to be really clear on who they're expecting to come in and live at the space. Because their supportive housing could mean so many things depending on who is going to be there. Is it families? Is it individuals? Is it affordable housing or is it supportive housing? One thing I've heard from DuPage United that I've encouraged them to share is one of their primary hopes is that young adults with a disability who grew up in Glen Ellen, that they would have a place to live independently in Glen Ellen rather than having to go live up at Misericordia. And I've met a couple of the moms of these young adults, and they're in their early 20s. They're not going to be able to live with their parents forever, nor do they want to. They want to have a degree of independence, but they're not capable of just getting an apartment and living on their own. And I think that is, if you're looking at having those sort of people living on your property, there is not a safety risk. And in fact, I would argue that if you look at what they're proposing versus what the Budgetel looked like before, it's also going to be much more aesthetically pleasing, safer, and a good, like it's going to be a better development and a better circumstance. I think depending on who they're going to have there, and what it's going to look like, it might seem a lot less concerning if, depending on who they're hoping to serve. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it's an interesting project, and your input on that is going to be really good. So, well, we're at the time when we have to, and if you were here in person, we would probably keep going, but we have to end the Zoom part of our class here. And I just want to thank you so much for being with us. And this is recorded, which means we can direct people to this so they can hear. I mean, the questions are great, but especially that first part was so powerful. And we'll direct more people to that so they can hear what's the great things that are happening. So thank you, April.
Thank you. And thank you for your long history of support. The pumpkin patch has been a joy in our lives also for years. So you're a little bit legendary in that standpoint as well.
I think the pumpkins are coming on October 8th. So
all right, I'll tell our team. That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll sell a bunch of them as we always do.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Blessings on you.
Oh, same to you.